Hello everyone and welcome back to Navis Nobilite. Today we're going to be doing another tutorial slash explanation video about the campaign rules. Now, I've been getting a lot of requests to do this and mostly my problem has been time, which is ultimately the same problem that anyone who is trying to make a campaign is going to run into. Because campaigns, like all campaigns with all miniatures, take a bit of time and a certain level of organization. I'm going to be sprinkling in a great deal of my own recommendations here to make things a little easier for our humble players who want to actually run a campaign. First things first, it talks about bringing together 4 people. You can bring together more. They don't have to be Chaos, Imperial, Orc, and Eldar. They can be other races. Other races have the rules for campaigns. But really, what you need is one person who has the time, energy, and people herding skills to actually manage the entire campaign. So that's going to be your biggest challenge. But let's talk about the campaign rules for Battlefleet Gothic. Now, here in the rules, it talks about bringing together at least one Chaos player and at least one Imperial player, with any amount of extra players can join in, including Orc and Eldar fleets. Now, bear in mind the more players that you have, the harder it's going to be to manage the game. Now, that's not necessarily going to make the game impossible to run or the campaign impossible to run, but recognize that with more people, it becomes harder to manage the rounds. So bear that in mind. Now, once you have a group of people who are willing to tolerate each other's presence for more than 5 minutes, you can get together and decide on a map. Now, there are campaign maps that are provided with the rule books that are basically meant for between 2 and 4 players. If you're going to need a bigger map, you're going to have to build your own. And a lot of that has to do with problems of making sure that the maps are fair, making sure that the maps are at least in some levels understandable and applicable to the map you're playing. Now, certain races have certain advantages in campaigns, and I'm actually in this series going to be making a video for each race in regards to their campaign and their advantages in that campaign. But today we're going to be talking solely about the base rules. Now, you can find all of these rules in the official rulebook remastered. It has all the rules right here, so this is for the base campaign rules, so let's get on to it. So, if you read through this, let's just be clear. Um, it's always a good idea to start off small, but if you have a whole bunch of people who've been playing for a long time, you can start bigger. Now, another thing is, like I said, you have to find a campaign arbitrator, someone to make sure everyone does their job, the game runs smoothly, people finish their rounds, and everything is going at the same round. Because sometimes it can be just as hard to get people to play the game as it is to prevent them from playing the game. Because sometimes you have to tell people you gotta wait. And that's not always easy, especially when people have time to play. So, at the start of the campaign, many of the systems in the subsector will be neutral. As the campaign progresses, this will change and players will gain control of systems that will pay them and in tithes and help repair their ships. Right? The whole design note about nominally under the Imperium, no surprises there. Imperial and Chaos players and other what I like to call empire building races will start with one of the systems in the subsector under their control. You roll a d6 to decide the order that both players pick their system, and record who controls which system with colored pins on the campaign map. Again, this is all done by the arbitrator. Any Eldar and Orc or any pirate faction start with a hidden pirate base instead and should write down secretly which system it is hidden in. They can pick a system that is already controlled by an Imperial or Chaos player. Okay, starting fleets in the fleet register. Campaigns generally go up to 2,000 points. A pirate faction generally goes up to around 1,500, but they can build up to a 2,000 point list. Now, generally empire races, so Chaos, Imperium, Tau, etc., build up to 2,000, and Orc and Eldar fleets and pirate factions build up to 1,500. Important, you must have the models to represent all of the ships in your fleet, in case they all end up in one big battle. If your fleet doesn't add up to 2,000 points, you only get what you have available. But don't worry, you will get to add new ships in the fleet during the course of the campaign as you buy and paint new minis for your collection. Each player has his own fleet registry, which means you have to keep control and a notation of all of your ships in that registry. He uses it to keep direct notes and dates of when the capital ship or escort was commissioned, i.e., purchased and or made ready for the campaign, along with the class of the ship and all other data. When it takes its fleet trials, i.e., it is assembled, painted, and leadership rating is rolled for its campaign history and its loss if it and loss if and when that occurs. If a vessel is used in battle before its fleet trials are complete, i.e., it's not fully assembled and painted, it will suffer a critical hit on a d6 roll of 1 every time it uses special orders. So this is important. Paint your minis and build them. Now, if you're playing on an online game, this rule is generally going to be ignored. I personally like to add it in as any new ship that has been added to your fleet due to the rules of adding ships to your roster has to spend one round that in a incomplete state, basically getting its maiden flight and shake-up cruise resolved. Ships which are added to the fleet register after the start of the campaign suffer a -1 modifier to their leadership due to hasty training and less experienced officers. When players fight battles, they must pick their forces from their own fleet register. The commander. That's you, bro. Each player's fleet has a commander, or an appropriately named leader for that race, who represents the player himself. Over the course of the campaign, you, the commander, will collect renown points and gain rank. Generally, you start as being naked covered by a bath towel, and you will end up being a Christmas tree covered in medals, ideally. At the end of the campaign, the commander with the highest renown is the winner, so it doesn't actually matter if you conquer the entire subsector. It's a matter of how many commendations and fancy badges on your chest. That's what really matters. Once you've filled your fleet register, you fill in the details of your commander. He needs a name, starts off with 1 point of renown, and 1 reroll. In addition, you must pick a ship that your commander is going to be on. It'll be your flagship. If the ship is involved in a battle, then guess what? You are there, and you may use the commander's reroll or any other special abilities he may have in that battle. If the flagship is not there, then you may not use your commander's reroll or abilities. If the flagship is destroyed, then it is assumed that your commander manages to make a escape somehow. He will not have any further effect in that game, but you may choose a new flagship for him once the game is over. In order for things to happen in the campaign, players must fight battles. I figure this isn't a surprise to anyone. At the simplest level, all players have to do is challenge any other player that is in the campaign to a game, and if they agree to the game, they use the additional campaign rules below, as well as the rules for the normal game. The only problem with this is it can lead to some situations where Imperial fleets attack other Imperial fleets to gain control of systems, and because of this, it's best if Imperial players are not allowed to attack each other, and if the Chaos and Eldar players restrain themselves. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the case. I personally believe that there are enough sub-factions within the Imperium that they're going to fight one another on a pretty regular basis. And the failure of the Imperium to appropriately organize on grand scales is one of the weaknesses of the Imperium. So I rather enjoy that. If you have a lot of Imperial players for the campaign, or indeed only Imperial fleets, it's best to split them into Loyalist or Rebels, the later being assumed to have gone to Dark Gods of Chaos. We all know that there's more complexity involved here, so let's bear that in mind, shall we? Now, anyway, however you decide it, you need to challenge other players in the campaign to a game. The game is arranged in exactly the same manner as one-off game. You simply agree on a time and a place and go play. Shocker. Just use the rules that are going to be below. Note that opposing players do not have to agree to play just because you happen to have challenged them in battle, but you may want to penalize players that refuse to play games with anybody for long periods of time. So if you have a player who's like, I don't want to play against Eldar players, I'm not going to play against them at all, they can suffer consequences. I would say that every time that you refuse to accept somebody's challenge, you lose a renown point or you lose something because it's simply a matter of you don't have the choice of saying no in a real combat scenario, and running away from a challenge is not something that is really accepted in 40K. So, the campaign turn. The campaign games include a number of extra steps which can take place at the beginning and the end of the game. These are described below. Unless stated otherwise, all of the normal Battlefleet Gothic rules apply in the campaign game. Each time that two players have a game, they both get is what is known as a campaign turn. The turn uses the following sequence of play. 1. Build up, determining initiative, roll for incoming orders, select target system if necessary, select forces from the fleet registry, you fight. Aftermath is you claim or don't claim the system, adjust the renown, promotions and demotions, ship experience, repairs and withdrawals, and then make appeals. So basically, this is an overlay over the main game. Remember that all of your ships and a lot of other things apply in the next upcoming battle. So the things can be persistent. We're starting with build up. When the build up stage takes place at the start of the battle, before either player deploys or picks his fleet. In the stage, you decide where the battle will be, what type of scenario you'll play, and what size of fleets to use. The stage has a number of steps that need to be carried out in the following order: 1. Determine initiative. 2. Receive orders, and 3. Pick your fleet. Determining initiative is not like in the main battle. You're determining who's the attacker and who is the defender. Some races will always be the attacker, some races will always be the defender. Bear that in mind and read your campaign rules. Roll to see who is attacker and who is a defender. The player who rolls the highest is the attacker. Lowest is defender. If one player has more systems than the other, his forces are stretched more thinly. So the player with fewer systems gains a +1 bonus to the dice roll, giving you an advantage if you are actually not controlling more systems. You may also want to incorporate the attack ratings from the scenario's introduction, where you roll the number of dice, picking the highest one to determine the initiative. Next, you receive orders. Although fleet commanders have a large measure of autonomy, higher command still sends orders down telling them what to do and what they must achieve. In effect, the players get to decide what happens in the battles but receive orders that direct the strategy of the game they must follow and the types of battles they will be allowed to fight. To reflect this, one of the players must roll a d6 and determine the type and size of scenario to be played. 1 to 2 is a raid, 3 to 6 is a battle, with point values between 500 and 750 for raids, and 750 and 1500 for battles. If one player has 21 renown points or more, he may choose whether to fight a battle or a raid. If both are the status, roll to see who decides. That basically represents you having such an incredible amount of clout and renown and glory that even if high command says do this, you can say I am not afraid of you or the repercussions. I'm going to do what I see fit. Decide scenario. When you have determined if you are doing a raid or a battle, you roll on this table to determine what you're going to be doing. So you roll in the tables below to determine which scenario is played. Or if both players agree, you can pick one from the listed type of scenario. You can see here on the table, you can do, in raids, it's Cruiser Clash, the Bait, the Raiders, Blockade Run, and Convoy. In battles, it's Exterminatus, Surprise Attack, Planetary Assault, Escalating Engagement, and Fleet Engagement. Decide location. You must then select the system, the attacker gets to pick this, which the scenario will take place. The system must be connected to one that is already controlled by the player via a warp route. If no systems are already held, any may be chosen. If an uninhabited system is chosen, the defender must reduce his points value by 100 points. Hard on the defender. Other types of system can affect the number of planetary defenses as described elsewhere in the rules. We'll get onto that. Next part, decide the size of the battle. Once a mission has been generated, the players will agree to the points value of the game and select their forces. The players can agree on the exact number of points for the game within the limits listed in the incoming orders table. If one player holds more systems than the other, their forces will be spread more thinly, giving the player with the least number of systems an advantage. Each extra system a player holds over his opponent's reduces his fleet size by 10 points. So you're already seeing that there are modifications here. Location matters, and uh, number of systems held matters. Now, Orc and Eldar scenarios. Orc and Eldar fleets only ever make raids. They never take part in battles. If you roll up a battle on the incoming orders table, then it is treated as a major raid instead. Roll for the scenario for the major raid on the raids table, but the size of the battle is increased to 750 to 1500 points. Now, this changes for certain forms of the Orc fleet. You can use orcs like Imperials or Chaos if you so desire. Read the rules in the Orc section campaign for more information. Now, picking your fleets. Both players must now pick a fleet using the ships from their fleet register. The total value of the ships you pick may not exceed the total points you and your opponent have decided for the scenario you are going to play. Note that you can't change the details of the ships on the register or adjust their points value at this stage. The ships you pick must come from your register and not be changed. Fight the battle. Then you, of course, throw dice at each other and see who gets knocked out first. Now, attacking pirate bases. Orcs and Eldar never get to capture systems. Again, this can be different for orcs if you read the rules. If an orc or Eldar player's opponent with a rank of Admiral or higher, or its equivalent for the other races, gains the initiative for a scenario, he can then attempt to attack the base instead of playing a normal scenario. The attacker must first find the base. Roll a d6 and multiply the score by 10. If you roll under the Orc or Eldar size renown, then you track down the base and the system that it is hidden and must be revealed. If the player fails to find the base, i.e. fails to roll under the defender's renown, then play a normal scenario. Once you know the location of the base, you don't have to find it again. It's obviously there. Once the base is found, the player may attack it if he controls the system or it is in a neutral system. If neither of these conditions apply, then play a normal scenario instead. Assuming you find the base and it is in a location where you can attack it, you may play either Planetary Assault or Exterminata scenario. If the attacker wins, the base is destroyed and can no longer be used by the Orc or Eldar player. So this can cripple pirate factions severely by losing their base. So it's always very smart to have your base in a good location, if you can. Okay, Aftermath. Once you have fought a campaign game and know who has won, you can come to probably the most important stage, the Aftermath. This is where you find out what effect the game you have just played has on the campaign map itself, as well as the effect it had on the ships and the crew that took part. This stage has a number of steps which need to be carried out in the following order. 1. Spoils of War. 2. Adjust Renown. 3. Promotions and Demotions. 4. Ship Experience. 5. Repairs and Withdrawals. And 6. Appeals. Starting. The Spoils of War. Whenever an attacker wins a battle, he may claim control of the system if it is connected by a rope route to one you already control. The system can only be taken over by that player if that battle was won, and if it previously belonged to the player he defeated, or if it was previously neutral. You can't attack your own. There's no point in attacking your own system and then trying to claim it again. It makes no sense. Whenever an attacker wins a raid, he may count the opponent's system where the raid took place as its own for the rest of the campaign turn. Okay, so if it's a battle, he controls it entirely. If it's a raid, he owns it for one campaign turn, which is important since the systems you control affect your ability to repair ships. So if you raid somebody, you're basically going to deny them resources, and you will gain resources for one campaign round. Next, you adjust Renown. Renown is a measure of the fame and infamy enjoyed by you, the fleet commander. Players start the campaign with 1 point of Renown and gain or lose Renown as shown on the Renown table right here. Renown is very, very important because at the end of the campaign, it what determines who's the winner. Note that you can gain and lose renown even if your commander was not present during the scenario, i.e., the flagship did not take part. Now, you can gain renown for winning a battle or a major raid, +2 renown. Winning just a raid, +1. Victory points earned. Victory points divided by 100, round up. Subplots, variable. Each capital ship Hulk captured. This means you control the field at the end of the match, and there are Hulk ships on the map still. You fought a commander with a higher renown, +1. Fought a fleet with higher points value and lost, +1. Fought a fleet with higher points value and won, +2. You will lose renown for losing a battle, losing a raid, every capital ship lost, and subplots. Note, a commander can never be reduced below 1 renown point. You may be renowned as a bad commander, but you will be renowned nonetheless. Now, promotions and demotions. The player gains promotions according to their renown, as shown by the tables below. It is possible to lose rank if you lose renown points. Your rank determines how many rerolls or marks of chaos you receive in the scenarios that you fight. Tau fleet commanders use Imperial table for the promotions, no surprises there, and of course orcs use their own as well. Imperial promotions, it's pretty obvious you can read this, but obviously when you get up there, you could do a lot of things and you get a lot of great stuff. Here's Mechanicus, you get, instead of a bunch of rerolls, you get additional refits. Chaos promotions, a bunch of marks of, only one reroll, but a bunch of marks of chaos. Orc promotions, it's based on rerolls. Eldar promotions, all types of Eldar, including Dark Eldar. Again, leadership bonuses and rerolls. Ship experience. As the campaign progresses, ships and their crews will gain experience. This is represented by an increase of their leadership characteristic and by giving them special crew skills. On the other hand, a ship that is badly damaged may have lost a sizable proportion of its experienced crewmen, which will reduce its effectiveness, while a ship that is destroyed will have to be replaced by a new or salvaged vessel with very inexperienced crew. Ships that fought in a battle and were not crippled or destroyed roll 2d6. If the roll is higher than their leadership, then either their leadership may be improved by 1 up to a maximum of 10, or the ship may roll in the crew skills table. You may choose which option to take unless the ship has a leadership of 6 or 7, in which case you must choose to increase that ship's leadership by 1 point instead of taking a skill. So this becomes a bit of a challenge for players to get really, really good leadership or gain upgrades to your crew. And when we get to that, you'll see why it's a hard choice. You either have more reliability or being able to do wackier things. Now, crippled ships. Ships which were crippled in a battle lose -1 leadership to a minimum of 6. Note that crew skills aren't lost for being crippled, even if the ship's leadership is reduced to 6 or 7. Destroyed ships. Ships which are destroyed, i.e. reduced to 0 damage points, must be replaced with a new ship. Change the name in your fleet register. The new ship has a leadership of 6, no crew skills, and any refits that have been taken are lost. So the good news is you don't actually lose the ship, you just lose the named element of that ship. Everything you earn is reduced to 0. Escort squadrons. Escort squadrons gain and lose leadership and skills in the same way as ships. Escort squadrons, which suffer 50% or greater casualties, are considered crippled for the purpose of experience, while those that are wiped out are considered destroyed. Now, all of this is going to basically push you to not be callous with your ships or use them as sacrificial lambs. You don't want to lose these effects. You don't want to lose these special abilities that you gain. At the same time, though, there are going to be circumstances where as your ships gain in experience, they also gain in a great deal of points cost. Every one of these crew skills or upgrades that you're getting increases the points cost of your ship. So bear that in mind. Repairs and withdrawals. In a campaign, ships that have suffered damage must be repaired, and it is the number of systems a player controls that determines just how much damage can be fixed. Sometimes the systems under your control won't be able to repair all the damage your fleet has suffered, in which case you can either withdraw the ships and send them to be repaired outside the subsector, or you can let them limp on until you have enough time to repair them. Repairs. Each system a player controls may repair a number of damage points. This varies depending on the type of system and your renown. The number of damage points different systems can repair is shown below, and I'll show you the table in a moment. Renown is important because it helps with recruiting and press ganging extra crew, claiming resources and time in the dock. Note that all criticals are repaired automatically, including ones which may not be repaired during battle, like bridge smash and seals collapsed. Also remember that if the attacker won a raid, he may count the enemy system where the raid took place as his own for a turn. You can use repair points to bring escort squadrons back up to full strength, in which case each escort ship is worth 1 damage point. So, here is the table. It gives you a table based on renown and the type of planet. So obviously you want higher renown, you will gain more repair points. And you also really want to have access to Forge Worlds, Hive Worlds, Pirate World, and of course pirate bases and pirate worlds. Civilized worlds are also highly desirable, so are mining worlds. Uninhabited worlds are the same no matter what. Now, withdrawing ships. A player may choose to withdraw a ship to get them fully repaired at a major base. Mark the fact that they have been withdrawn on the fleet register. Ships which are withdrawn are unavailable for the player's next game, after which they return to fleet with a full number of hits. Escort squadrons, which are withdrawn, return at full strength. Now, after that is done, we go on to appeals. After repairs have been completed, both players can appeal to higher authorities. Higher authorities, the gods of chaos, the high lords, etc., for aid. The amount of help you can expect to receive depends on how well you've been doing, as measured by your renown. Again, renown is very important. To reflect this, the number of appeals that may be made depend on the player's renown, as shown by the table below. There you go. More renown, more appeals. Appeals may be made for things listed below, and I will show you that in a moment. If you are allowed to make more than one appeal, you can ask for the same thing up to 2 times. You can't get it more than that. And you may have those as well granted. Or you can appeal for different things. It's up to you. However, you must declare what you will appeal for this turn before determining whether the appeals have been granted. Having declared what you are going to appeal for, roll a d6 for each appeal and see if the appeal is granted. There are 3 different types of appeal. Not every fleet is allowed every type. Allowances, restrictions, and specific upgrades are printed in the fleet list. The general upgrades on the following pages are used by most fleets. They are printed here and not repeated in the fleet list. So, when you roll a d6, you can roll for reinforcements, refits, or other. Reinforcements, you may add 1 new capital ship or a squadron of up to 5 escorts may be added to the player's fleet registry. Note that you must have the models to represent the ships. If you don't, they cannot be added to the register. So if you get that new ship, you paint it up, you got to roll that 2 up in order to bring it into the fleet. There's a chance it may not be allowed. Refits. If you go through the background section, you'll see that ships often have things added. Or have equipment updated or improved. This is called refitting. And in a campaign, you get a chance to refit the ships in your fleet in order to hopefully improve their performance in different areas. If a player who is granted a refit must choose one of his capital ships to undergo the refit, they must then roll a d6 to see what type of equipment system is upgraded. On a roll of 1 to 2, you receive a ship refit. On a roll of 3 to 4, an engine refit. On a 5 or 6, a weapon refit. Then roll on the appropriate refit table given later to see exactly what you get. If your roll is a result that the ship already has, roll again until you get a result the ship doesn't already benefit from. The points value of the ship is increased by 10% for each refit it has, and you'll need to update your ship register appropriately. Other appeals. Other appeals allow you to request the aid from other allied forces, such as like the Imperial players can call upon the aid of the Space Marines. Chaos players can draw on the powers of the Warp. The types of other appeals you can make are listed under the type of appeal allowed earlier, and if granted, allows you to roll on the appropriate appeal table. Again, if you roll a result on that table you already have, roll again until you get a new result. And finally, conclusion. As noted In the introduction, you should set a deadline for the campaign. When the campaign deadline comes up, the player that has built up the greatest renown is the winner. However, once you've got some experience running campaigns like this, you should feel free to change the criteria for victory. For example, you could say that the first player to gain control of 5 systems is the winner, though this will be tough for Orc and Eldar players, or you could keep on playing until the entire subsector is entirely controlled by Chaos, in which case all Chaos and Orc players win, or entirely controlled by the Imperium, in which case Imperial and Eldar players win. It's very Order v Chaos. Other alternatives include doing a convoy run, in which a fleet has to travel from the system to system across the map, fighting opponents along the way as it does so. Or you could have the game based on an Orc WOG, where the Orc players are allowed to control systems. The most important thing to remember is that the rules above are only the starting point, and the possibilities for making your own campaign are really limited by your imagination. Have some fun, and I agree. So here we go to the upgrades. Now, these can be earned by every ship unless otherwise noted. Engine refit. These ships' engines are fitted with additional systems to improve and made to the power generators and energy relays in some fashion. Roll in the following table. So for 1 through 6 roll, secondary reactors, which gives you extra 2d6 when on all head full. Evasive jets, which means if you, let's see, hull of a vessel is studded with powerful short burn engines, which allow it to drastically turn to avoid incoming fire. At the start of the enemy shooting phase, the ship may take a leadership check. If it is passed, make a single 45-degree turn immediately. However, the ship may not go in special orders the next turn. Very cool. Maneuvering thrusters. Additional thrusters along the length of the ship allow it to turn much more quickly. The ship reduces the distance it needs to move before turning by 5 centimeters. That is really good for cruisers and battleships. Arrestor engines. The ship has a number of secondary engines mounted near its prow, which enable the vessel to reduce speed rapidly. When attempting to burn retros or come to new heading special orders, the ship may add +1 to its leadership. Auxiliary power relays. The rear of the ship is crisscrossed with additional cables and pipelines, feeding more power to the engines. It gains +5 centimeters to its speed. And finally, navigational shields. The ship is enveloped by low-frequency shields designed to shut aside debris and other impediments as the ship moves. The ship does not suffer reductions for speed through blast markers, including gas and dust clouds and similar effects. A really cool set of upgrades. There are ship refits, improved sensor array. When taking leadership checks to go on special orders, the ship gains +2 for enemy ships rather than +1 on special orders. Additional shield generator, +1 shield. Sounds great. Superior damage control. Rolls 1 extra dice on the end phase when attempting to repair damage. Reinforced hull. Increasing damage by 25%, rounding up, but reducing its speed by 5 centimeters. This makes ships far tougher. Improved logic engines. Ships countless matriculators? God, they have weird words. And mechanical cogitators enable the crew to perform with full effectiveness even in the midst of fierce battle. The ship does not suffer -1 leadership when in contact with blast markers. And overload shield capacitors. Specialized power relays and generators allow the ship's engineers to temporarily divert extra power to the shields. For each hit against the shields, roll a d6. On a roll of a 6, the hit is ignored and no blast marker is placed. Great upgrades. And weapons refit. This is what everyone wants. Extra turrets, +1 turrets. Turbo weapons. You get an additional right column shift when firing over... Oh, it does not suffer the right column shift, firing over 30. Really good for battleships. Targeting matrix. All weapons firing with gunnery table weapons, basically, benefit from a left column shift on the gunnery table before any other effects. Autoloaders, a +1 leadership when attempting reload ordnance. Superior fire control, +1 leadership when attempting lock on. Motion tracking targeters. If the ship is on all ahead full, burn retros or come to new heading, its firepower and land strength are only reduced by 25% rounded up rather than halved. And finally, crew skills. Expert gunnery. When the ship attempts a lock-on special order, you roll 3d6 and discard the highest roll. Awesome. Skilled engineers. When the ship attempts all ahead full or burn retro special orders, 3d6, discard the highest. Excellent. Adept trimsmen, which same thing with come to new heading. Excellent pilots. Basically, it gives skilled to your bombers and fighters. So any bombers launched from the ship may reroll the dice when determining how many two-hit rolls they have. If fighters from the ship intercept attack craft or torpedoes on a 4-up, they are not removed but remain in play. You can't have it if you have the vessel doesn't have attack craft, and Eldar already get this for free. Disciplined crew, once per battle, the ship may reroll a failed leadership or command check. It's literally a ship reroll. Excellent one. Elite command crew, once per battle, the ship automatically passes a leadership check or a command check. No need to roll any dice. Marvelous. And here are some maps, and it's going to go over the maps and the channels. Basically, what it is trying to show you is what the maps look like, what the channels are, etc. There are a number of rules specifically involving things like Blackstone Fortresses and Port Maw itself. I recommend reading that in detail. But here you go. You can see like Agro World. What is C? Let me quickly go back up. Oh, Civilized World. Yeah, Civilized, Agro World. M. What's M? I don't know these things. I have to actually go all the way up. Oh gosh. Here we go. What's M? Oh, Mining World. Oh god. Oh, anyway, you can look through these maps and pick which one is the best one for you. I personally like the bigger ones. They just make me happy. I enjoy them. Larger maps equal larger campaigns. So that's really the overview of the campaign rules for Battlefleet Gothic. As you can see, they're very well designed, they're very well situated, and they're very mutable. So if you're planning on starting a campaign, this is where you start. I'm going to be releasing a series of videos that are fleet and race specific about how their campaign rules are supposed to work in the upcoming future, and I will see you all again in the next video. Have a great day.